And I think that's divisive because they're only putting up one perspective, one version of the story. And before anybody calls me divisive, before anybody says that's what I'm doing, let it be known, official announcement right here, right now. Any person who I mention on this channel is welcome to come onto this channel and we will do a live interview. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. How are you doing on this fine Wednesday? I'm doing quite well. So today we're going to talk about yet another aspect of this whole Danbury situation. And let me show y'all what prompted me to want to make this video in particular. So what you're looking at here is the YouTube homepage for I-95 WRKI. So here's Dean Esposito talking about the Career Academy and why the Career Academy deal fell apart whenever they were trying to buy the Summit building. Of course, that is something that I am certainly investigating, all of the deals and all of the different real estate transactions about this Career Academy, etc. But as you look down the page even more, I sorted these chronologically. So the most recent videos are up here, and then you get older as you go down. Here's another one with Dean Esposito. Danbury Mayor Dean Esposito on inflated Career Academy budget. So think of it this way. Not only is he going on the radio show to talk about these issues, but the radio show, despite going on air, I'm assuming every single morning, is taking those segments of Dean Esposito and putting them on YouTube, right? They're not just giving him a platform on the radio. They're now broadcasting what he has to say, his side of the story on YouTube. Let's see what else Dean Esposito or the local Danbury government has been on the radio to talk about. So here we go. Here's two of them having to do with the Career Academy and Dean Esposito. Here's another one with Dean. Danbury mayor says there will be a second, this word I'm not allowed to say on YouTube, home test distribution. Here's another one from a year ago. Mayor Dean Esposito confronts Ethan and Lou on heels of criticism. I don't know what that's about. Maybe we can watch that together one day. Here's another segment featuring Dean Esposito. Danbury Mayor Dean Esposito says he is not laying the groundwork for governor. So him talking about governor. Here's one from a year ago with the former mayor, that's Joe Cavo, outgoing Danbury mayor on why he said no to city council role. And then this one I found interesting. This guy, Mark Boughton, he was actually the mayor of Danbury before Joe Cavo for like 20 years. The interesting thing about this guy, other than the fact that he was mayor for 20 years, is that he now works as the Connecticut State Tax Commissioner. And from the sound of things and from my readings of the city council minutes, the meeting minutes, he works closely with the governor. Now, another very important note is that when I'm investigating this Career Academy situation, would you be surprised to find out that this guy, former mayor of Danbury and now state tax commissioner of the state of Connecticut, is also the chair, or was the chair, of the steering committee for the Career Academy. So he's the chair of the committee having to do with this Career Academy, or at least he was as of 2021. He's a state tax commissioner and he's the former mayor of Danbury. Not saying anything is particularly wrong with that, although there could be. I just haven't really investigated it. Just think it's interesting that he has his hands in so many things. So as I was editing this video, I found this footage from 2015 on the I-95 WRKI radio page. Clearly, this depicts former mayor Mark Boughton, who we're talking about right now, serving as the officiant in the wedding of this guy on the right is actually Lou from the Lou and Ethan show. So it seems to me that there is definitely, at least going back to 2015, a relationship between the local government, Mark Boughton, he served for about 20 years, and this radio show. I don't know about y'all, but I ain't just picking any old person to officiate my wedding. Comment down below what you think. Another one, another video featuring Danbury Mayor Dean Esposito on winning the election. Another one with Dean Esposito on retail weed and if he's used cannabis. So I kind of trying to make him seem relatable. Look at all this Dean Esposito footage and coverage. The mayoral candidate, Dean Esposito, calls opponent Roberto Alves out on negativities. Oh my, look at this holding cell. Okay, another one. Danbury mayoral candidate from a year ago, Dean Esposito says Roberto Alves wants to defund the police. They give Alves an opportunity to respond to what Dean Esposito was saying. Okay, and here we go. His negativity is fine, but Roberto Alves' negativity is not allowed. There's a video here from a year ago where Dean Esposito said that the state was underfunding Danbury schools. Here's another video featuring Dean Esposito about keeping the taxes low. And then right here from a year ago, candidate for mayor Dean Esposito, I do live in Danbury. I guess somebody was saying he doesn't even live in Danbury during the race. And then there's a stupid video right here. Danbury mayor Joe Cavo claims he has secret photos linking him to Bigfoot, which was not true. It's just like a joke thing they did. But again, kind of trying to make him seem relatable and funny and cool and authentic. Look, now as we get back to when Cavo was the mayor, you can see that they featured him a whole lot as well. Mayor Cavo says Danbury officials want to wait on retail weed sales. Another one from a year ago, Mayor Joe Cavo says Danbury will have to create public weed smoking zones, which, I mean, this makes a little bit more sense because that's something that people were probably actually very interested in. And then you see something here. I haven't even seen this video. I'm actually going to download this one. Mike Allen, who's apparently a local newsman, according to this title, says, local newsman says recent incident at Danbury Library is not journalism. Mike Allen takes issue with Danbury Library YouTuber calling himself a journalist. Now, we can make a whole nother video on this. Like I said, I just now saw this for the first time going through this with y'all. But I will say, just from a constitutional perspective, the Supreme Court has ruled that you do not need any special licensure, any special tests, any special permits to be considered a journalist. And so if you are gathering content and disseminating it to the public under the Supreme Court's rulings, you are a journalist. But you see this a lot. I mean, I've seen people at NBC do this. I've seen people at CNN do this. If you're not part of their club, if you haven't subscribed to their rules, if you haven't paid their dues, if you haven't taken and passed their tests, if you haven't graduated from a four-year university in the majors that they consider to be acceptable, then the journalism cult wants to say you're not a journalist. And it's like, that's cute, Mike, but there's more than one way to be a journalist, and the Supreme Court would back me up on that and not you. I don't want to get too deep in the paint with Mike Allen because, first of all, I don't know who he is, don't know who he works for, and I have not seen this video till right now, but that's just my first impressions here. But if you go back just two videos earlier, this is the point finally we're getting to today. Danbury Mayor Joe Cavo speaks on public library police investigation. We will be listening to this together, and I will leave a link for it below. As you can see, it has 12,000 views, whereas the other videos on this channel have like 33 views, 39 views, 44 views. Now, there's a couple that have thousands, like this one, 1.7 thousand on this Mike one, 4.4 thousand on the paranormal investigation one, right? So there are some that have kind of caught on. Danbury Mayor Cavo says vision board played a role in deciding to step aside. Seven views. But this one is really the reason that we are all here today. Now, in this video, Joe Cavo says some absolutely preposterous and ridiculous things. And Sean, I actually saw Sean had the opportunity to ask former Mayor Joe Cavo about this particular interview. Now, whenever Sean asked him about it, not only did Joe Cavo have no comment, Joe Cavo said that he doesn't recall this interview. I'll put the clip in here.
I had a lot to say on the radio. You did a radio interview concerning the library incident, did you not? I don't recall.
But we are going to watch that video together and react to it. But before we do that, I wanted to show y'all a little bit of the investigation that I have done into this show, into the people running the show, and into the ownership of the station and the program and all of that. Now, the reason that I want to look into this is because in these investigations, I get these like gut feelings. Some might call it a premonition. Some have even gone so far as to call me a psychic, which I don't think that's what it is. I think I'm just very intuitive and I have the ability to pick up on patterns. One such pattern that I've picked up on throughout now years of doing this type of investigation is that if it feels in your gut like there are some connections up at the top, then you should certainly look into whether there are, because there probably is. I mean, probably 90% of the time I've gotten this gut feeling, I have been right. And the other 10% of the time, I still think I'm probably right, and I just haven't found the connections yet. So in this particular case, I wanted to look into what the connections are between the Danbury city government, or perhaps particular Danbury city officials, and this radio show. So the name of the show is either The Morning Show with Ethan and Lou or The Ethan and Lou Show. So the first thing I wanted to do was go and see who are Ethan and Lou. So here's Ethan. He went to Ithaca College in 73. He graduated, bachelor's degree in communication. Okay, so this is the relevant part. The radio station was christened on Christmas Eve in 76, and he is in his 42nd year at this station. So he is a permanent fixture at the WRKI I-95 station. He said 27 years. He's been the morning show host. For the last 15 years, he has been a member of the Ethan and Lou morning show. He wants to make listeners smile, whatever, etc. Okay, so now let's go to Lou. Now this guy's name is Lou Milano. He's been a broadcaster since 99, and he's been a co-host of the I-95 morning show since 2007. He lives in Danbury. His morning show partner, Ethan Carey, and he treat this job for what it is, a great privilege, an honor to entertain the loyal listeners of the mighty I-95. We happen to be damn good at what we do. It just seemed interesting to me that they do a show every single morning, and they stopped posting YouTube clips 9 months ago. And so many of their clips have to do with Danbury's mayors, whether it be current mayor Dean Esposito, former mayor Joe Cavo. And if you go back far enough, you start to see that they have mentioned Mark Boughton as well. So if you just keep scrolling, I mean, you'll see, look, here's Joe Cavo, here's Mark Boughton, 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 here's Mark Boughton. Look, here he is again, here he is again. And during the time that Mark Boughton was the mayor, guess who was his chief of staff? If you guessed current mayor Dean Esposito, you would be correct. So Dean Esposito worked in the mayor's office for Mark Boughton while Mark Boughton was the mayor. He also worked as the chief of staff under Joe Cavo while Joe Cavo was the mayor. And now he nepotismally became the mayor himself. And I just got this gut feeling like, look at this, Mark Boughton. It just seems to me, just based on pure speculation and gut feelings, like this is some type of propaganda arm for the Danbury government. Now, does it necessarily mean it goes all the way to the top? No, it could just be these hosts, right? Ethan and Lou. So I started looking into this radio station. The first place I started is Wikipedia. You can't always necessarily trust everything you find on Wikipedia, but it's a good place to start. And then you can go and mete out whether or not these things that you're reading on here are true or not based on public records. So 95.1 FM is a radio station licensed to Brookfield, Connecticut, serving Fairfield, Litchfield, New Haven. The station is owned by Town Square Media, and it carries a classic rock radio format. The studios are located on Federal Road in Brookfield, and the transmitter is also in Brookfield. So then if you hover over Town Square Media, it is an American radio network and media company based in Purchase, New York. The company started in radio and expanded into digital media. So it was August 2013 when a deal was announced in which Town Square Media would acquire 53 Cumulus media stations, including WRKI, which is the one we're talking about, and WINE for $238 million. It was part of the acquisition of Dial Global. Town Square Media and Dial Global are both controlled by Oak Tree Capital Management, and the sale to Town Square was completed November 2013. Now, the Wikipedia page does say, unlike many other Town Square radio stations, WRKI kept most of the station's local DJs, which would include this guy and the other guy, Ethan. I briefly looked into Oak Tree Capital Management. As you can see here, they're senior executives and directors. I haven't found too much on this quite yet, but I just wanted to show y'all that's something I'm looking into. And as you can see here on the Federal Communications Commission, the FCC's official.gov page, it does show that Town Square Media was fined $6,000 in 2020 for violating the rules that are set in place having to do with radio contests. I looked into it. They had promised the winner of a contest some Elton John concert tickets, and then they never gave the person the tickets. Now, I do want to be very, very clear here. This is just another radio station that's owned by Town Square. This is the one in El Paso, Texas. So this fine has I don't know, maybe nothing at all to do with the station in Connecticut. I just wanted to show y'all that the parent company, has been held responsible for violating contest rules that are set in place by the FCC. There's also apparently a class action that may be taking place for the shareholders of Town Square Media. When I see something about shareholders, that alerts me to the fact that it is a publicly traded company. And I have looked into some of the SEC, Securities and Exchange Commission filings. I might be able to do a separate video on that. It's a bit tedious. And as far as right now, I haven't really found much. So that's kind of the background of where we are. And that's kind of what we're looking into. I do want to pull up the video of former mayor Joe Cavo talking about the situation at the library with Sean. I think I have a reaction video to that library situation already. If I do, I'll link it below. If I don't, I may just need to make one because it is just so preposterous. The whole thing is just such a disgrace. So this video we're about to react to was published on June 17th, 2021. So it's just a few days after Sean's library incident, which I believe happened around the 15th. So within a week of Sean's video airing on the internet, you have Joe Cavo not only going on to this morning show to discuss his opinions on it, but also this morning show giving him a platform on YouTube to amass thousands of views to share his opinion. Now, I have spoken to Sean whether this morning show ever gave him the opportunity to come on the show and discuss his side, and he can correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I gathered, they did act like they were going to let him come on, and then they ghosted him. So he never did get the opportunity to come and tell his side of the story. And as you will see from this video that we're about to watch together, the radio station hosts do seem very biased. They do not seem like they are trying in any way to give Sean the benefit of the doubt, to understand where he's coming from. They don't seem like they're trying to hold the police officers accountable, and they don't really seem to take seriously the United States Constitution. Because they demonstrated such a bias, and because they clearly haven't put a video up letting Sean tell his side of the story, and because they put another video up just a few days later of this other weirdo coming on the show talking about that's not journalism, it leads me to believe that this is a biased radio station. And these hosts in particular are biased in favor of the government and against we the people. So maybe I'm wrong, and I would be more than happy to host Ethan and Lou on my channel so that we could get to the bottom of what we really agree and disagree on. And I don't want to speak for Sean, but I'm sure that Sean would be happy also to go on the show and explain why he does what he does and what his opinions are. I think it's unfair that Sean wasn't given the opportunity to go on this platform to tell his side of the story whenever they gave two separate old dudes the opportunity to go and talk about this library incident, which have amassed close to 15,000 views total. On top of the fact that they regularly feature Joe Cavo, it just doesn't seem fair to me. So without further ado, let's watch this video together and see if we can keep our nerves in check through the whole 13-minute ordeal. Now, I do just want to remind y'all that less than 2 weeks ago, Sean did ask former Mayor Cavo about this specific interview. And former Mayor Cavo, now City Councilman at large Cavo, said he did not recall. So hopefully this video makes its way into his browser, and perhaps this video may help him to refresh his recollection about the interview. Perhaps maybe the next time someone asks him about it, and I don't know, maybe perhaps at a city council meeting or something like that, he may recall what he said on this show a year and a half ago.
Ethan joining the show now. He's the mayor of the great city of Danbury, a friend of the Ethan and Lou show. It's Joe Cavo. Hey, Joe.
Hey, Joe.
And good morning, gentlemen. How are you today?
We're doing good. Beautiful day. Beautiful day.
Sorry. If y'all want to watch it without my commentary, there's a whole video that exists out there that I'm not even in. It's that one. You can go watch that. But I just thought of something that I feel is necessary for the context of it all. The library incident in Danbury, Sean did not go to court for. The incident he went to court for has to do with an incident that happened at City Hall. The library incident, if you recall, is the incident after which Utter said that 20 years ago, Sean would be dead with his teeth missing. Now, two officers did face consequences from this library incident, Tibbetts and Utter. Tibbetts was put on a 3-day no paid suspension, and Utter was put on an 8-day no paid suspension. And the Chief Rittenauer, even had to come out and actually say, look, we do not condone the way those officers acted. Okay, so in the library incident, that's the one where they were completely, absolutely 100% in the wrong as far as Danbury PD goes. There wasn't even a policy in place at the time of the library incident that said that Sean couldn't record. It was the very next day after the library incident that the library put a policy in place that you can't record in the library. So there wasn't even a rule in place at all whatsoever that Sean could not record. His life was frankly threatened on body camera footage. And Danbury Corrupticate even had to go so far as to give these officers consequences for the way that they acted that day. Okay, so with that context in mind, that is the incident that this guy is talking about right now.
I told you this off the air. I'm going to say it again. As quickly as I possibly can, I'm going to get to what we know to be the facts. I'm going to share our... You would agree, Ethan, we're in lockstep on this opinion?
Yes, we are.
Okay, so I'm going to share it for the both of us, and then we're going to kick it to you. There was an incident at the Danbury Public Library. It was uploaded to YouTube 1 week ago today. It currently has 70,000 views. This YouTuber went in.
Let me see how many views it has today. So today the video has 627,000 views. But Lackluster covered this incident as well and has 4.4 million views. There's other videos. Look, this one right here has 124,000 views. Larry Lawton. Yeah, so suffice it to say, it has way more than 70,000 views at this point, but let's proceed.
The library to perform what he calls an audit. He went in with an agenda. The Danbury police officers who are featured.
And listen, you can say what you want about auditors, but don't we all do things with agendas? Like, agenda is just a dog whistle word that is used to excite a heightened emotional state out of people. He went in there with an agenda. You mean like the agenda that y'all are putting on right now by allowing the mayor to come on your platform, but not letting this guy? That's an agenda as far as I'm concerned, Lou.
In the video, didn't know the law.
Not
he
true.
had obviously memorized the law as it pertains to filming in public, in a public place, which the library is. It was not a great look for the Danbury Police Department.
It was not a great look for the Danbury Police Department. So thank God at least Lou had the wherewithal to say that. Lou, if you want to learn the law, I'm happy, again, like I said, to come on and tell you what the Constitution says. And I'll do you one better. I will bring case law and we can read it together about what the United States Supreme Court has said. Lou is going to tell thousands of people that it's not the law that you can record in public. And that's just not true. And that's why I truly believe this is a propaganda arm for the government. Even if Lou and Ethan are just like personal friends with Cavo and Boughton and Esposito, that still can demonstrate corruption. Because as a radio broadcaster, you are a journalist. You do have a sense of responsibility to report on all sides of a story and to report on the truth. So for Lou to sit here and say Sean doesn't know the law, it's not true and it's irresponsible because Sean did know the law. And if he didn't know the law, I can guarantee you Danbury would have strung him up in the village square for it, just like they did on that bogus trespassing charge. They didn't even try to go after him about this library situation. Why? Because he knows the law.
This person was not ticketed, was not arrested, is not under investigation.
So then he must know the law then, Lou.
Danbury Police Department has launched their own investigation. Ethan and I said this the other day, is these are complex issues with the police department in America. And I do not think...
Dog whistles. If you want to get people riled up, say complex issues, America, and police in the same sentence. Just do that.
You solve problems as complex as this with divisive tactics.
And if you watch the video, it's not divisive tactics. It's just not. It's not divisive tactics. Sean shows up with a camera, which, listen, I've always been able to admit that it is a little unsettling. If you're just minding your business and there's just some random person with sunglasses on videoing you. But it doesn't matter if it's unsettling. You know what else is unsettling? The security cameras in the bank, the security cameras in the movie theater, the security cameras in the DMV, the security cameras in the post office, the security cameras on college campuses. That's unsettling too. But Big Brother is always watching us. So why can't we watch back? I can admit that it's unusual or unsettling. I cannot admit that unusual equals illegal or wrong. I just can't. And that's what they're trying to conflate here, is that somehow participating in constitutionally protected activity is necessarily divisive. It's just not. And even if it were divisive, we have a right to do it, but it's not divisive. It's just not. It's perhaps unusual, perhaps unsettling, perhaps weird, and weird is subjective, right? Some people might say weird, some people might not. But the only divisive actions that I saw taking place that day were on the part of the Danbury Police Department. Tibbetts stormed in there, all 5'3" of him, and started hollering about "give me your ID." Now, if you've watched any videos in the last 5 days on this channel, then you know the Fourth Amendment protected Sean from having to forfeit over his ID until or unless there was what? Specific, reasonable, articulated suspicion that Sean had or was fin to commit a crime, right? So because there was none of that, we had Tibbetts demanding ID. You have Utter literally threatening Sean, "This isn't going to end well for you." And that's divisive. That's the most divisive thing that I saw in that whole video. What Sean was doing wasn't divisive. If you consider that to be divisive, then so is the freedom of religion. So is going out and praying to the God that you believe in. That's divisive if filming in public is divisive.
This person's agenda is not to affect change, but to get attention, fill their ego.
That's not true. All this stuff he's saying just isn't true.
I've never seen anyone on video or in person in my life be more disrespectful to any police officers as this person was. He was egging them on in an attempt to get them to behave.
He wasn't. That's the thing about it. There are auditors who do that. There are. Sean isn't one of them. And so they are projecting fake news, false allegations onto Sean, frankly, defamatory as far as I'm concerned, and not allowing him the opportunity to be heard on their platform. I think it's unfair. I think it's preposterous. And I think that's divisive because they're only putting up one perspective, one version of the story. And before anybody calls me divisive, before anybody says that's what I'm doing, let it be known, official announcement right here, right now. Any person who I mention on this channel is welcome to come onto this channel, and we will do a live interview. Live. Joe Cavo, Dean Esposito, Yakabella, any of them, Ethan, Lou, come on live, and we will do a live discussion and debate, and I will show y'all how it is to respectfully disagree with people and find points of commonality and agreement. So anybody who wants to come on my show, email address is linked below, and you can come.
I don't come away with a good taste in my mouth at all about this.
That is the only fair thing I've heard Lou say in this whole show. He doesn't come away with a good taste in his mouth about the whole thing. Fair. That's an opinion. It's not a statement of fact.
Danbury Mayor Joe Cavo, what do you have to say?
So, I think I'd have to agree with you, Lou. I think that, certain people, just have to be antagonistic for some self-serving purpose. I don't.
Some people have to be antagonistic for some self-serving purpose. Like, it can't just be, wow, the officers in this city, like, literally threatened this guy's life. It can't be, these officers had no idea how to act, and I could see how somebody would be upset being treated that way. It's some people, and the implication is Sean Paul Reyes. Sean just wants attention. Don't you think there's a lot of safer ways to get attention than to confront people with guns?
I don't believe that there's any benefit that comes from things like this. Our police officers we're not familiar with the building use policies at either the library or...
Not familiar with the building use policies? He's going to brush that right off. Oh, well, our police officers were not familiar with the building use policies. That's what you should have led with that. You should have said it was a bad situation because our officers were not informed. They were not up to par. They were not up to speed. They were not educated. They're going to be disciplined for that. I could understand why somebody would be upset. I wish he wouldn't have handled it quite that way. These are the specific problems I had with it. No. His argument is some people just got a big ego and want attention and they want to rile people up. And our poor officers, they just didn't know.
City Hall, nor would I expect them to be, familiar with every building use policy throughout the city. And
you should be familiar with the building use policy when you're relying on the building use policy to kick someone out and violate their constitutional rights. You absolutely should. And I'm glad you were only mayor for 1 or 2 years because it's very clear that you don't understand how shit is supposed to be running.
And so, this gentleman claims that he was within his rights, First Amendment rights to film. And
he was.
Certainly there's a lot of complexity to First Amendment law, but our city buildings, library, certain places in the city are considered to have limited public use.
The limited public use would require that there be posted or a policy of some sort that actually indicates that someone's not allowed to film there.
And basically what that comes down to is you can pretty much do whatever you want in those buildings, providing it runs along the lines of the use of that building. So let's just take the library, for example. You can go into the library to check out electronic media. You can go in to check out a book. If you go in there to film, the building's policy is the building's policy.
But the policy wasn't that you can't film. The day the policy changed such that you can't film was the day after the footage that you morons are talking about. So maybe get that together before you go live on air the next time, Joe Cavo, because you look like a clown.
And if the building's policy says no filming or photography, there's a reason why they have that, and they have the right to enforce that. And so I'll disagree with this YouTuber that, he has unlimited, unfettered rights. I mean,
he didn't say that. He didn't say that. Do you see what that is? It's a straw man. It's building up an argument. It's building up a thing that someone didn't say in order to burn it down or tear it down. I never one time and ever in one of Sean's videos in my life have heard him say, I have unlimited, unfettered access to film wherever I want. I've never ever heard him say that. And I would venture to say he knows that that's not true. He said he had the right to film in that library that day. And that was the truth. He did have the right to film in that library that day because there was no policy anywhere on the books that said no filming in this library. It's a limited public, blah, 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 da, da, da. There was nothing about not filming in the library. So nobody said he had the unfettered right to film anywhere and everywhere he wanted to, Joe. And I'm very glad Joe is saying he doesn't recall this interview because, my God, if he did, he would have to defend it.
I've talked to legal counsel, throughout the last week while we've discussed this issue, and there's not a great belief that he's on the right side of this. And so,
but all them library charges got dropped, didn't they?
To come here and to be antagonistic, it serves no purpose. It really doesn't. And like you said,
I think it serves a great purpose. It shows the disgusting, rotting underbelly of all these good old boys, small towns that have never had to face transparency or accountability to we, the people who pay them.
It's to fulfill his own needs, his own gratification, and so be it.
So why is Joe Cavo on this morning show? To fill his own ego, his own gratification? Because he don't have a YouTube channel anybody gives up about watching. So he's going on Bestiana, Ethan and Lou show. I think this has to do with his ego. You want to start taking ego shots? This has to do with your ego.
People are going to be like that in the world. It's just
like you.
Unfortunate.
And what I would warn people against is please don't pick a hard line one side or the other on this. These are
like you just picked by not letting Sean come on this show, but by letting two people with the same viewpoint come on your show. Oh, okay. We won't do as you do. We'll do as you say. Yes, sir, Captain.
Very complex, sensitive issues. I mean, we all believe in the First Amendment.
No, you don't.
Right.
So when I sit here and defend.
Also, believing in the First Amendment is the stupidest shit I ever heard. You don't believe in. You believe in gravity? You believe in the air blowing? It just is, baby, whether you believe or not.
The police, I do it because they're under siege right now. And I feel as if,
well, maybe if they knew how the hell to damn act, they wouldn't be.
Rather, we have issues with the police and social injustice.
And this is the problem. I'm going to tell y'all right here, right now, I am not on one side or the other as far as I hate cops, I love cops. I am much, much more nuanced than that. There's individuals who don't know how to damn act, and those individuals need to be held to account. The reason why there are millions now of people who just say, I don't like any cops, is because when one bad apple does something wrong, nothing happens to them, or an appropriate consequence doesn't happen to them. When one of them deletes body camera audio of them saying a slur, they get promoted to sergeant. When one of them says that they would literally have assaulted and killed a person 20 years ago for so much as filming in public and nothing happens to them except an 8-day suspension, that's a problem. When there are officers on the police force in Danbury who shot and killed 2 people and now that person just a couple months ago got promoted, that's why people say they don't like cops. Because when there are bad apples, the police, the establishment, the unions, all of them, they don't get rid of those bad apples. They promote them. And so I can't blame people who say they don't like any police. I can't blame people for saying enough is enough. We have these open air prison guards armed, in charge of enforcing the laws. They don't enforce them against themselves. They don't enforce them against each other. And they don't even enforce them appropriately against we the people. I don't blame people for saying enough is enough. And here you have Ethan and Lou kikiing on the morning show with Joe Cavo talking about the police are under siege. And so for that reason, we should stomp all over people's constitutional rights. We shouldn't take a side on this issue, even though one guy literally said 20 years ago, I would have killed him. No, it's poor police. Well, maybe if people like Joe and Ethan would say, that was ridiculous, Mayor Cavo. He don't need to have a job, because if he talked about me like that, about my family member, about my child, about my mother like that, I would have a problem too. No, God forbid they say that. The police are under siege. And this is why we can't have a constructive argument about it. Because it's all this propaganda dog whistles under siege. They're the ones with the guns. They're under siege? Okay.
Justice issues in this country, they need to be solved. And this is not the way to do it. And they're also kind of...
Disagree. This is precisely the way to do it. Film them and request body cameras of how they talk about us. It's exactly the way to do it.
They're related, but they're not. It's just so complex that this divisive, nasty tactic was not...
You mean the divisive, nasty tactic of threatening his life? The divisive, nasty tactic of telling him he wasn't free to leave because he didn't turn over his ID, which is a violation of the 4th Amendment? The divisive, nasty tactic of having this clown on the radio station and not allowing Sean his side? Because that's all the divisiveness that I'm seeing.
Way to go about it. And I really wish people would stop going about things this way.
Right.
That's fine to say. I wish people would stop going about things this way. That's fine. That's an opinion. You're allowed to have that opinion.
And Lou, I will tell you, and I don't know how you were raised, but my parents raised me.
Dog whistles about how his parents raised him. Well, his parents definitely didn't raise him right, because he don't know how the damn Constitution works.
That when an officer of the law told me to do something, I better do it.
Open air prison guards, little Joey. When an officer tells you to bow down and pray to the devil, you better do it. When an officer tells you to strip off all your clothes in public for a strip search, you better do it. When an officer tells you to jump off a bridge, you better do it.
I can always grieve it later.
Fuck that. I ain't doing that. Oh, you can always grieve it later to who? The courts that the cops are best friends with? The prosecutors that the cops are best friends with? You really going to grieve it later? No, you're not. That's
what the courts are for. That's how our system of justice works. You may disagree with them. You may disagree with their opinion on it, but you don't take it.
So then why the are you on this radio station right now talking about it if that's how the courts are going to do it? If the courts are going to do it, why are you on this radio station right now, Joe? Why are you here? If the courts could take care, if he really broke the law and it's really all these complex legal issues, why are you here telling your wrong, dumb opinion about it?
Out in the street, it's not street justice here. We have a court system to decipher the
Now he's calling independent journalism street justice.
These laws and decipher the amendments and to tell folks you were on the right side of this, you were on the wrong side of this.
Interestingly, Judge Stango, who was a prosecutor at the time that this interview was aired, president of the Prosecutors Association at the time that this interview aired, he didn't even address the constitutional issues. So all this shit about deciphering amendments in the courts, that didn't even happen. So just more blustering coming out of this moron.
And that's how that happens. And so, you know, I think that you probably were raised in a similar fashion to, you know, respect police officers.
I was raised to respect police officers and do what they say too, but I'm not a sheep following a clown, and I went and learned the law myself. Just because your parents told you to do some dumb shit doesn't mean you still do it when you're 64 years old.
And do what they say. You may not agree with it.
Do what they say. Just do what they say. Just follow orders. Even if you don't agree with it, even if it violates the Constitution, even if they get suspended in the most corrupt police department in the country, that's all right. Just follow their orders.
But do what they say and then sort it out later.
But this is why I think this radio station is a propaganda arm. Because look, you have the mayor of Danbury going on discussing Danbury issues to Danbury people and saying, just follow the police's orders. You might not like their orders. You might not agree with their orders. But I'm here on this radio station as your mayor telling you, you better, like my parents told me, and like this family values propaganda we're going to bring in that dog whistle. You better follow orders from the Danbury police, even though they don't understand the building codes, even though you don't even expect them. You said it on air. You don't expect them to know the building codes that they're enforcing, that they're trying to enforce as if they are laws. You better, Danburyans, you better still follow their orders, even if you don't like it.
In a more official administrative manner.
I can tell you this, that I have a friend who's a police officer in upstate New York.
Of course you do.
I won't mention his name. I won't mention the police department. The same exact thing happened. And it said audit, different guy, the same thing in a library in this particular town. I have to believe that these people are doing this because they do get 70,000 hits on YouTube. And I got to believe that
it sounds to me like y'all are bitter that you can't get 70,000 views on YouTube.
they're monetizing that. Wouldn't you say, Lou?
Well,
Yes.
that's exactly it.
Yeah,
You know,
if you are at a certain point with social media and YouTube, it can be
I will tell y'all, it does vary based on like RPM, CPM or whatever, but 70,000 views isn't even $1,000. So if somebody like travels to go somewhere and stays in a hotel and stuff like that, it ends up being a wash. Like you don't make that much money on 70,000 views.
a little complex getting it off the ground to where you can monetize it. But he seems like he might be one of those individuals who does make money off the videos.
Does CNN make money off of the stories they report on? It's a rhetorical question. They do. Does Fox News? Yes. Does NBC? Yes. Does MSNBC? Yes. Does TMZ? Yes. Every single corporatized news station in the country makes money off of their reporting. Do Lou and Ethan get paid a salary for reporting on stuff? Yes, they do. So why is it that only independent journalists, it's only independent people who are not bought and sold into the cult that get this criticism? Lou and Ethan, do y'all make money? Or are you volunteering? Are y'all volunteering for the last 40 years you've been working? No, you're not. You haven't been volunteering and doing this pro bono. You've been making money. You've been making money to pay your bills and send your kids to school and shit. So why is it a problem if somebody else is making money off of reporting on stuff?
Right. And that's pretty clear by looking at the YouTube video, because every 10
I hope Sean is making hundreds of that. I hope he's making $1 million this year.
seconds an advertisement pops in.
Yeah.
Because he puts his life and safety on the line, and he's not divisive, and he does it for us. He does it so we can see how these people act, and he does do it to affect change. I know that in my heart and soul. So I hope he makes $10 million off of this shit this year.
So what these folks do is they, work on it, going to places of business and saying, look, I have 70,000 hits on my YouTube site, and so you may want to advertise with me.
He never says that. Actually, when they ask him what the name of his channel is, he won't even tell them. He won't even tell him because he doesn't want to get special treatment based on how many views he has. He doesn't want to get special treatment based on how many subscribers he has. He wants to go in there like a regular Joe Schmo and see how the government treats we, the people, average, regular folks.
And, oh, by the way, it's going to cost you this much money. So, they're generally operating a business under the guise of, being First and Fourth Amendment advocates. And
so a lawyer, a constitutional lawyer who does constitutional cases is operating a business. Is it under the guise of First Amendment, Fourth Amendment? No, dumbass. People are allowed to make money. People are allowed to start businesses. Last I checked, every time some damn politician runs for office, small businesses are the backbone of the country. The backbone of the country is the small business until the small business is doing something you don't like. Then it's under the guise. It's under the guise.
It's a whole muddied water situation. And, First Amendment law, Fourth Amendment law can be extremely complicated. Our attorneys here in the city and our outside counsel.
Okay, well, I'm also a lawyer. This is not legal advice. This is not legal advice, but it's really not that complicated. You're allowed to film in public, even in a limited public space. If there's no policy that says you can't film, this is not legal advice, but it's really not that complicated. This is why I make these videos. Honestly, this video is gonna be so long. This is why I make these videos. It's why I started. It's why I made the very first video I ever made. I made it on TikTok and I was showing people court documents. The reason I was doing that is because I grew up very poor. I was the first person in my family to even go to college, graduate from college. Obviously, first person in my family to go to any type of higher education after college, and certainly the first lawyer in my family. I realized that this is the gatekeeping mechanism bullshit that this profession and all the other people who want to gatekeep our rights from us, they support this notion that it's so complicated. It's just so complex that you average losers would never understand it. That's what they want y'all to think. And it's not true. It ain't that damn complicated. It is not that complicated. And I will literally go to my last day on earth telling y'all exactly what the things say because it's not that complicated. They hide it behind big words that people don't even use in regular conversation. And they all pat each other on the back because they were able to learn these stupid big words that really shouldn't even be being used in the first place, because things should be more easy to understand. But as far as Cavo goes, it ain't that complicated. You're allowed to film in public, period. You're allowed to film in public in particular without being harassed and threatened with your life by law enforcement officers. Yes, you are. It ain't that complicated.
There's a tremendous amount of First Amendment attorneys in the country because the law is so complicated and the amendment is complicated.
If you heard something that Joe said or I said or Ethan said that you disagree with, we respect that and we want you to know that that's okay. But what I'm begging
let me on the show.
Begging you to do, no matter how strongly you feel on either side of this particular issue, is not to let some outsider.
Oh, now it's an outsider. This is what they do. You want to talk about divisive, Ethan and Joe? Y'all want to talk about divisive? How about calling a fellow citizen some outsider? How about that? How about that for divisive? How about that for divisive? How about calling a journalist not a real journalist because he's not in the club? How about that for divisive? Don't let some outsider. Thank God some outsider came in and made this statement. Thank God some outsider came in and did it. Because if it was some insider, I'm not sure anyone would care. And y'all would spin the story, slant it the way for your agenda that you want to tell it. And nothing would probably ever change in the city of Danbury. I, for one, am grateful some outsider is coming in here and making Danburyans wake up and say what exactly really is going on in our town that we care about, that we live in, that we love with these officials.
Punk come into our community.
Now he's a punk. They did not allow Sean the opportunity to come and defend himself.
Community and divide us, because that's what he is. If you watch his follow-up video, he's not bright. This
is all just personal attacks.
Just memorize the law.
What the do you think lawyers are, you dumbass? We just memorize the law. You think the Lord comes down and bestows upon us this brilliant intelligence of the law? No, you read it from books and you learn it. But because Sean Paul Reyes didn't go to the University of Pennsylvania Law School, he's just some guy who ain't bright who memorized the law. Maybe the guys on this show who ain't too bright should memorize the law. That might get us a little farther on as a democracy.
Anyone can do that. But
anyone can do that, including you two morons before having Mayor Joe Cavo on here. But instead of memorizing the law and talking about it, you just have Cavo saying it's very complicated and there's a lot of lawyers in the country because it's so complicated. Now he ain't too bright. He just memorized the law. Anyone can do it. So is it complicated or can anyone do it?
please don't let this guy come in and divide you from your neighbor, even if you disagree with them.
Can we rewind for a second?
Yeah.
I want to ask you both a question. Joe, it's a comment that you had made that they had rules saying that you could not come in unless you were doing something in the library that a library does, like internet or taking a book out. Then if he could have, if you're thinking if he could have been arrested, why didn't the Danbury police do just that? Because they weren't familiar with the situation?
No, I don't think that. I think that they were trying to just de-escalate.
Right.
They were not trying to de-escalate. One of them went outside and talked about him.
What was happening there? It didn't. I don't think it arrived to.
This is why I can't do audits. I don't cuss these people out. I would go to jail.
We create laws and we create ordinances all the time, and a lot of times we have to leave the application of that law up to the discretion of police officers. It's not. You can't write a law that's so cut and clear that it fits every situation.
There's no law that says you cannot film in public. There is not. There is no reading of any ordinance that can take away your First Amendment rights.
So there's a little bit of latitude, a little bit of leeway. Our police officers,
latitude and leeway for the suspended tyrants.
Felt that it didn't rise to, something that required him being arrested. He did say that he would leave. If you were going to arrest me, he'd rather not spend the night in Danbury's jail. He would rather leave than do that. And so,
which is a very important component, because to be trespassed in most instances, you must first know that you're not supposed to be there. And the clearest way to know is that people have asked you to leave. No one asked him to leave. And that's very important.
That was the end purpose. That was the end goal, that they got him out of the library. And, the problem
which he is entitled to be in.
Some of the problems I have with it is, it's a crazy world. And you don't know who people are. And you don't know what their intention is. Are they filming the library to maybe come back and do something nefarious?
I have heard this so many times, and it's the dumbest shit I ever damn heard. Do you think somebody would make it so obvious that they were casing out the place as to show up 6'2" with cameras? You really think that somebody would be that stupid? No, I don't. And if it's a constitutionally protected activity, such as filming in public, especially when there's no policy against it in that particular limited, whatever y'all want to try and call it now. So what? Somebody comes in the library and maybe they haven't taken a shower or washed their clothes in a while and they need to use the computer to apply for a job or something. So we don't know what their intention is. Somebody comes in and maybe they're wearing a Jesus shirt and it's like, well, they don't know what their intention is. Somebody comes in and they don't speak English. It's, we don't know what their intention is. This is not reasonable at all. This is not reasonable articulable suspicion. It doesn't pass constitutional muster. And that's why they weren't able to charge him with anything. Y'all know as good as I do, if they could have charged him with a damn thing at that library, they would have. And they didn't, because they know that he was allowed to be there. And now we have Joe Cavo, who apparently doesn't recall this interview.
I don't recall.
Talking about, we don't know what people's intentions are. Okay, well, he told you his intention, which was to gather content for a news story. That's the intention. We don't know what their intentions are. What's your intention of being on this show, buddy?
And they are looking to, be able to see exits and doors and windows and things like that. It makes me very nervous. And so, there's...
Well, you need to take a Xanax and get over it, because the Constitution lets people film in public, buddy.
Children in our library, you don't know if somebody is a pet. You don't know if somebody is a registered sex.
I would sue him for defamation for that shit. I would sue the shit out of them for that. And you know what? Maybe Sean still will.
Offender.
A pedophile or a sex offender? Don't they have registries for that?
You know, it's an interesting world. And so, you know, you really want to know.
This is absolute tomfoolery. And this is a formal request to appear on the Ethan and Lou show. Formal announcement that I need to go on this show and tell them they cannot let people call people or imply that they are sex offenders and pedophiles, and then to never let that person have the opportunity to come and clear their good name on the show. I might be writing a letter to Town Square Media over this.
Who's there and
it's a huge liability, these two, Lou and Ethan.
What their purpose is if they're doing something that's outside of the policies.
It wasn't outside of the policies, you dumb
And so I think you should have the right to be able to ask them those questions.
I would be
Then bring him on the show and ask him, because it doesn't look like that's something y'all ever did.
very, if I was a police officer right now, I wouldn't be confident, and I wouldn't
Well, the ones in Danbury are very confident.
feel as if anybody has my back, and I'd feel as if a lot of my tools have.
I don't have the back of someone who says 20 years ago I would have knocked this guy's teeth out. No, why would we have his back? He wears a gun. He has multiple weapons on his belt every day. Why would you back that person? He should be fired.
Been stripped away, and you know, we have this social justice issues that these police are training in new ways on how to de-escalate and deal with these social issues on the street. And now you go out there and you have somebody like this trying to manipulate them and embarrass them at a time where things are very wrong.
If they didn't do embarrassing shit, Lou, they wouldn't get embarrassed.
Right.
We just keep taking away their ability to do their job. And
What should they have been allowed to do, Lou? Kill him? Like 20 years ago? Like they wanted to? Like they said they would 20 years ago? Should they have been allowed to knock his teeth out themselves? Should they have been allowed to do that? Because that's what they wanted to do. What exactly should they have been allowed to do? You just heard Mayor Cavo just now say the police had the discretion to put him in jail. They had the discretion to put him in jail, to arrest him. You just heard Mayor Joe Cavo say they had that. So who's really taking shit away from them? They, according to Joe, which isn't true, he was wrong, but according to him, as far as Lou and Ethan are concerned, the police did have the discretion to take him to jail. Nobody took shit away from them. All these social issues, use the word social issues, police, and complex in the same sentence and watch everybody start shivering.
They were asking this guy to leave a library.
They were not. Actually, they were not. Run the tapes, Ethan. Run the tapes, Lou. Sean said, am I being asked to leave? I'm about to leave the library. You know what Officer Ken Utter said? No, you're detained. You asked for a supervisor, and so you have to wait here until the supervisor comes. You know what else he said? Until you give me your ID, Fourth Amendment violation, you cannot leave. They weren't asking him to leave. In fact, it's exactly the opposite, Ethan and Lou. They told him he wasn't allowed to. No one asked him to leave. He said, just as soon as you're asking me to leave, let me know. Because like you said, I don't want to be in the Danbury jail tonight. The officers were not asking him to leave. This is propaganda. This is fake news. And I would like to go on the record and tell the citizens in the city of Danbury exactly all the things that y'all lied to them about.
This is wild.
I know. And
that we agree on.
the thing is, you know, the thing that, you know, comes out of this and comes out of the investigation into this is that, you know, we get a better look at our building policies. We get a closer
So that we can make them more strict and put people in jail.
look at them. We go over, review, adapt, change, and then we'll disseminate that information out to the PD so that in future cases, they have that information. They know exactly where the city stands and what the building policies are. And so, you know, from some of the
thought you didn't expect them to know the building policies. You just said you didn't expect them to know them. But now you're going to expect them to know them?
You know, some good will come
Pick a side.
out of this, for both sides. But, it's not the way to go about it.
I got a fun text message just now from Joey Atch. He says, none of that is how YouTube works at all. So I got it wrong.
Okay.
You got a lot of things wrong, babe.
He knows.
Which is fine. I figured.
I got it wrong, but it's fine. I'm not going to correct the record on any of the things I got it wrong on, but
It's a difficult subject, and I'm just pleading with our local area residents to respect.
Our folks, Lou, have been great here.
Yeah, I think
they've
so.
been extremely supportive. I haven't really had any, large amount of people screaming at me. I have had that happen, but they're not from.
Then why did they shut down comments on all the Danbury pages?
This area. They're from all over different parts of the country. I mean, some ridiculous subject lines like, your tyrant police officers viciously attacked this resident. And it's like, where do you come up with that? Did you watch the same video I watched? Because,
Listen, if we
that's a good question, because after this interview, I'm also wondering if we all watched the same video.
we have the conversation like adults and we respect each other's opinions as neighbors.
But you don't. You don't respect people's opinions. You clearly don't. Because if you did, you would have allowed someone on the other side of this issue to come on the show and talk about it. But instead, you allowed two people in exactly the same demographic, old white man, to come on and talk about the one type of opinion about it. You don't respect other people's opinions. If you did, you'd let me come on your show and talk about it.
And we listen to each other, then some good will come out of this. But I'm
Agreed. Have me on.
don't let this moron manipulate. He thinks he's smarter than us.
No, he doesn't. No, he does not. No, he does not. He wants to empower people to know their rights, because I'm sure there was a time he also didn't know his.
We are smarter than him, and
Clearly you are not.
we can prove that by having adult conversations with
Have me on, because I did go to law school and I do know how to have an academic debate. So I'm happy to do that.
each other about these complex matters.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I couldn't agree more with you, Lou. It's definitely.
We respect all those differing opinions, but the three guys we have talking to you about them right now all have the exact same opinion.
Not the way to go about it. There are much better ways to go about it.
Then you do it. Let's see. Let's see the way that Mayor Joe Cavo would go about protecting the citizens' rights, because clearly he failed as a mayor.
And it's just not productive.
All right, Joe. Hopefully
Disagree. It was very productive. It opened a lot of people's eyes.
next week we're talking about shenanigans and hijinks that we create. Fun times.
Oh, did I tell you I was going to be on vacation next week? Oh, no.
Wow.
You are listen, you're entitled to a vacation. If you have to take one, you take one. You just let us know.
I'm not taking. I'll be here.
What is the Camp David of Danbury?
It was supposed to be a joke, but it wasn't funny, so it flopped.
Danbury Mayor Joe Cavo, we appreciate your time as always. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Guys, have a great weekend. Thanks very much.
You got it.
This video is already so much longer than I anticipated and so much longer than I wanted it to be. But there you have it. Again, very interesting to me that this radio show just stopped posting YouTube videos shortly after Dean Esposito was elected. Very interesting to me that they do a morning show for presumably hours every single morning. And the specific videos they ended up posting are very largely having to do with government officials, featuring and platforming government officials, giving them the platform to say what they need to say, put out their agendas, put out their messaging. And it doesn't look like a lot of that is ever countered by alternative viewpoints, at least on this YouTube channel. And so it just begs the question, why? Why did they choose those specific videos to feature on the YouTube channel? Two of the most viewed videos on the whole entire channel have to do with Sean. And so I don't know. I mean, you tell me, why did they choose these specific videos to put up as videos on YouTube instead of just letting it live on the live morning show? Why are they platforming government officials for political agendas and not platforming people who are disagreeing with these government officials? Why are they not respecting other people's viewpoints by allowing them to come on and tell their side of stories? Why haven't they had Sean Reyes on their channel to tell his side of it after calling him a moron and insinuating that he might or could be a or a sex offender. Why? Questions that need answers. In the meantime, facts ain't defamation. Love you, mean it. Okay, bye.